I've been in a bit of a Devil May Cry craze lately, and so I thought that now would be a good time to cover the franchise's most iconic villain.
I was going to be the king of this world.
Okay, maybe I lied a tiny bit, but I did watch Netflix's DMC, and I felt that Arius was actually done incredibly well there.
Believing yourself prophets, when all you do is uphold the existing order and call it God's design.
Especially compared to his in-game counterpart. Now, obviously the show has plenty of other complaints about it, but its villains were all done quite well, and Arius in particular actually felt like a character this time around instead of whatever we got as a result of the troubled development of Devil May Cry 2. So how did they take this skeleton of a character and transform into honestly something that rivals some of my favorite villains? Let's take a look at both representations and find out.
It will be ecstasy.
Devil May Cry 2's story is underdeveloped, to say the least. It's disjointed, with the story being split up between Dante's and Lucia's routes, and many scenes not making much sense if you don't play the missions chronologically, bouncing between the two routes as you go. But there's nowhere in the game that actually indicates this, so you're just going to be confused unless you look up what the Devil May Cry 2 timeline looks like, and you'd have to be an absolute lunatic to do so anyways. The game had an excellent development cycle. Anyways, on to Arius. We don't really get much about Arius as a character in DMC2. The only thing we really know about him as a character is...
He is the president of an international public corporation.
And we get similarly little information about his company, Ouroboros. Arius' goal is to hunt down the Four Arcana in order for him to reawaken the demon Argisax and act as a host for him in order to become an immortal being ruling over all of mankind. To do so, he went to the island of Vie del Marli and transformed it into a demon's paradise in his hunt for the Arcana, the Medaglia, the Spada, the Baston, and the Chalice, a coin, sword, staff, and cup. To aid him in his task, he created many mannequins, but one of them, Kai, defected. She was taken in by a woman, Mathieu, who renamed her Lucia and raised her as a daughter to fight against Arius. Meanwhile, his animated version did a much better job establishing him as a character. Argisax isn't just some random demon this time, he's actually relevant to Arius' character development. Arius was an inventor, but his peers all rejected his ideas and laughed at him. So one day, Arius climbed the hill to throw all of his papers away out of frustration when one of them happened to blow into a half-buried Baston. The Baston incinerated this piece of paper, catching Arius' attention and causing him to approach. Argisax spoke to him as he got near and promised the ability to surpass even his grandest vision in exchange for collecting the Four Arcanas and releasing him. Though the task would take many lifetimes to complete, Arius was given the ability to reincarnate again and again, however many times it took in order for him to obtain all of the Arcana. And while the show doesn't mention Arius creating Kai or Lucia, they appear to be different characters this time around, as Lucia appears for like 3 seconds in Season 1 while the government is searching for Dante, and Kai is one of Arius' most loyal servants. In the game, Argisax's backstory is that he was defeated by Sparta a long time ago, but in the show, he gets a bit more. He was born during a hybrid eclipse back when the human world was connected to Makai still, and consumed entire civilizations, absorbing their power. He ruled over Makai and sacrificed his citizens as he pleased in order to sustain himself. Eventually, Mundus and the rest of his high priests grew tired of his rule and overthrew him, sealing him away with only the unification of the Four Arcana during a hybrid eclipse being able to summon him back. Moving on to the story in Devil May Cry 2, it opens with Dante saving Lucia from some demons while she's breaking into a museum to steal the Medaglia to keep it away from Arius. Before heading out, she leaves a dagger in a map, summoning Dante down to the Isle of Vie de Marli. Down in Vie de Marli, Lucia introduces Dante to her mother, Mathieu, who explains what Arius has been doing to their home and how he's turned it into a demon's paradise, and asks him to deal with Arius and his master. Dante agrees to help out, and he and Lucia split up to search for the remaining arcana. Mathieu already has the baston, and Lucia stole the medaglia from the museum, so that just leaves the spada, guarded by the Tartarusian, and the chalice, guarded by the Plutonian. Later on, both of them catch up with Arius at the helicopter pad at an oil field. Lucia is first to arrive, and Arius reveals her origins to her.
Well, well, it appears that the defect is back.
Defect?
Lucia understandably doesn't believe him and throws a dagger at him while calling him a liar. But Arius deflects her dagger, bouncing it back at her and tearing her sleeve, revealing the mark that Arius left on her. She has Kai, her real name, written on her shoulder. He commands her to go and retrieve the arcana for him, but when she refuses, Arius teleports her into a cave where she has to fight the moth demon, Noctaren. Dante arrives not long after, but Arius dismisses him and flies away on his helicopter, summoning the demon Furia Taurus to fight him. Lucia survives her encounter with Noctaren and eventually makes her way to the other missing arcana, the Chalice, which is guarded by the demon Plutonian. Dante meets up with her after her fight, and she hands him the arcana to return to Mathieu while she goes off to face Arius.
Bring these to Mathieu for me. Please. I've got something that I need to take care of.
Lucia disguises herself as one of Arius' secretaries to sneak into the building, which is enough to fool her way up to his office, but he sees through her disguise.
For a defect, you show promise. But did you really think you could deceive me? Have you come back to me, Kai?
Lucia fights Arius, but he uses his magic to imprison her and use her as bait to lure Dante here with the arcana. Meanwhile, Dante returns to Mathieu to hand over the chalice, but instead she hands him the other 3 arcana and tells him to go rescue Lucia from Arius. Dante flips a coin, agreeing to help if it lands on heads.
Your lucky streak continues, Granny.
Dante heads to Arius' office where Lucia is restrained. She pleads for Dante not to hand over the arcana, but Dante ignores her, dropping them on the ground and challenging Arius to a fight.
Crap like that doesn't interest me. But your swan song will.
Dante appears to come out on top, but an exasperated Arius claims that he must obtain the power of Argisax or he cannot transcend all living things. He notices that Lucia's presence is holding Dante back and motions to attack her. Dante rushes over to free her, and Arius then blasts them both out of the building. Arius now holds the 4 arcana, but he can't summon Argisax quite yet.
We have until the sun is completely eclipsed.
Dante and Lucia then fight to open the gate to the underworld, defeating various demons like Phantom... Wait, what? And Trismagia. They track down Arius again, but are a little bit too late, as the sun has eclipsed already. Arius begins the ritual, but something is off.
Is there a problem?
Dante flaunts the medaglia, revealing that he had given Arius a false coin for a false god. They fight again, but this time Dante is the clear winner.
I was going to be the king of this world!
King? Yeah. Here's your crown.
But while the ritual was incomplete, the door to the demon world was still formed. Dante then flips his coin to determine which of him and Lucia should head into the demon world, but his coin was rigged with 2 heads, so Dante won the flip and went to fight Argisax. Back in the human world, Arius is revived and possessed by Argisax, leaving Lucia to fight him alone. She defeats him in this form, but he continues to mutate and succumb to Argisax's influence. He grows to astronomical proportions, but is defeated by Lucia once and for all. I think. He spent half the fight off screen. I am assuming that he's the one I killed. Now, you may have felt like that last section felt kind of bleh in terms of a summary. In the game, Arius seems to kind of exist just because the game needs a villain in order to justify its existence. Arius ties into nothing else in the rest of the franchise, and you could replace him with literally any other evil force and you wouldn't even notice a difference. But in the show, Arius has a lot more presence and gets a lot more development, and importantly, actually ties into other events and characters in the franchise. I'm going to summarize things a little bit here, as the series is called video game villains and not Netflix villains, but I'll still be sure to emphasize enough of his story for you to get a good grasp of how much his characterization has improved. His animated counterpart is introduced in the first episode of Season 2. He'd spent the last 672 years slowly acquiring the Arcana and had acquired the Medaglia, Spada, and Bastone, only needing the Chalice now, which lay embedded in Mundus's throne. He works with the Vice President of the United States, William Baines, launching an assault on Hell as a distraction to get Mundus away from his throne as Lady sneaks in and steals the Chalice. The two of them manipulated President Hopper into approving this raid, while keeping the true suicidal intention of functioning as a distraction from him. Our first proper introduction to Arius in the show comes during a PSA for Darkcom, where he spreads propaganda about the demon threat, emphasizing Darkcom's importance as the protector of humanity from the demons. This same PSA also reveals that Darkcom is a subsidiary of Arius' main company, Ouroboros. Baines thinks that Arius' campaign might be a bit heavy-handed, but Arius disagrees.
The most effective propaganda is the most obvious. The point isn't to convince people, it's to give them a feeling of unease. Dread the ideal customer.
Lady returns with the Chalice, but she's pissed about the lives lost in the suicide mission to distract Mundus and quits on the spot. Arius counters by offering to promote her to commander of Darkcom's entire military division, claiming to give her the freedom to pursue mission objectives as she sees fit, which she reluctantly takes.
Only so somebody else doesn't fuck it up.
He tells her that the plan is to open the portal to the demon world briefly and use the Arcana to fire a kill shot at Mundus before closing the portal again. But he needs to lure Virgil back to the human world in order to obtain his blood to open up the portal once again. To ensure Virgil's return, he utilizes Mary's father, Jester, who is his undercover agent in Mundus's court. At a political fundraiser, Hopper pulls Arius and Baines to the side to rant about how he was lied to regarding the Hell invasion. He worried that Arius' antics could get him impeached and tries to re-establish control over the situation and threatens to tear up his contracts with Arius. Arius reminds him of the power he holds as the president of Ouroboros and how easy it would be to expose Hopper's secrets, such as a pill habit or the fate of his latest mistress.
God's donations didn't put you in office. Mine did.
Virgil, having been baited back into the human world, makes an appearance on The Stan Sullivan Show, where he reveals photos of demons being tortured at a prison facility, whose ownership can be traced back to Ouroboros.
The invasion of Makai and the lives it's claimed from both our realms has all been engineered by one man, Arius von Ehrenberg.
Arius was at first intrigued by Virgil's appearance on the show, but upon hearing this, gets mad and orders the feed to be cut. Shortly after, President Hopper calls the show's set to strike a deal with Virgil. He'd give Virgil the location of Arius' bunker in exchange for Virgil stopping the war that Arius and Baines had started. Dante meets Virgil at the yet unruined reflecting pool, where a sniper prepares to fire a special bullet at Virgil, but Arius has him stand down to watch the brothers fight. Eventually, Arius gets impatient and orders his sniper to take the shot, but Virgil sees it coming, removing both himself and Dante from the line of fire and killing the sniper himself. Virgil comes out on top in his skirmish with Dante and leaves for Arius' bunker to deal with him himself. His motivation being a lie told by Mundus that it was servants of Argisax who had killed his mother, and it was insinuated that Arius was the mastermind behind it.
I had absolutely nothing to do with your mother's tragic death, but I had to make you think that I did in order to get you here. Liar!
Arius counted on Virgil's vendetta, however. He played off of Mundus's lie and knew that he could use it to his advantage to draw Virgil to him to extract his blood so that he could open up the gate to the demon world. With the power of the Arcana on his side, Arius is able to stand toe-to-toe with Virgil. He absorbs the chalice and pulls out the Sparta to match Virgil's Yamato. The two of them fight, but Arius is easily able to get the upper hand and use his magic to restrain Virgil. While he has him restrained, Arius makes a small cut on Virgil's neck, allowing his blood to flow down the Sparta and into a vial for future use. Dante and Lady arrive to distract Arius, and Dante shoots his gun at him, causing Arius to let go of his hold on Virgil long enough for Virgil to rush in and slice off Arius's left arm. Arius flees through a portal to his mountain lab, and Virgil opens another one for him, Lady, and Dante to follow. Despite having all 4 Arcana, Arius still has to wait another 22 hours for a hybrid solar eclipse in order for the necessary cosmic energy to fully activate the Arcana and summon Argisax, leaving a small window for one of them to be taken. In his lab, Arius grafts a mechanical arm in place of his missing one, and has his Darkcon soldiers pay Hopper a visit, where one of them gets nervous and kills Hopper in his secret service, allowing Baines to take over as acting president. Virgil, Dante, and Lady all sneak in and find a room filled with Ouroboros artifacts, with Dante sneaking one of the coins into his pocket. Meanwhile, Arius has figured out that Lady had caused his security systems to fail, and has Kai release the imprisoned demons to meet them. They eventually find the room with the Arcana, but Kai is waiting for them alongside a couple other mannequins and a horde of demon prisoners waiting to fight them. They try to fight them off for as long as they can, but eventually it's clear that they're not capable of taking them all on, and Virgil opens a portal to send Dante and Lady through to safety, leaving him to fight alone.
Not only more pretentious than me, but more hubris as well.
Despite Virgil putting up a strong showing on his own, Arius arrives and his new arm is easily able to block Virgil's attacks, allowing Arius to banish him to the Trismegia's realm. Arius places the chalice alongside the rest of the Arcana and activates his machines in order to validate them, but it fails once it gets to the Medaglia. In the chaos of the previous battle, Dante swapped out the Medaglia for the Ouroboros coin that he grabbed from the treasure room earlier. Dante and Lady take the Medaglia to Professor Lucan, the only man Dante knows of that might be capable of destroying an Arcana. Lucan says that he would need 8 hours to fully unmake it, and he creates a bunch of duplicate signals all around the world to distract Arius and hopefully buy enough time. Despite Lucan's best efforts, Arius still manages to track him and the real Medaglia down with 1 hour to go. While Kai and his demons are fighting Dante and Lady, Arius notices how Dante reacts particularly strongly to Lady being in danger, and so he orders his demons to
Target his vulnerability.
kidnapping Lady and luring Dante out of the building. With the building unguarded, Arius sneaks inside to kidnap Lucan's granddaughter Maddie and use her as a bargaining chip for the Medaglia.
I'd say I wish it was under better circumstances, but these are actually quite good ones for me.
Like Dante, Lucan has a weakness and ceases unmaking the Medaglia to save his granddaughter's life. Lucan hands it over, but Arius has a demon slice him in half, while he sends Maddie away to the Trismegia's dimension with Virgil. Baines recovers Lady's body from Lucan's home and brings her to New York. He used Darkcom's technology to heal her, but still has her restrained so that she cannot interfere with Arius's plans. Lady tries her hardest to convince Baines about Arius's true intentions, but Baines is completely on board with what he thinks is going to happen.
This is the rapture. It is just as it was written in scripture.
Meanwhile, Arius has Dante captive and tries to convince him to swap over to his side. In his mind, he and Dante already agree on everything, as the only one who personifies chaos more than Dante is Argisax himself. He shows Dante visions of Mundus overthrowing Argisax, as well as his own discovery of Argisax and journey of reincarnation. Dante couldn't care less about Arius's offer, though, and instead attacks him personally, calling his methods lame and unoriginal, enraging Arius to show Dante a vision of Arius ripping his head off. Despite being unable to convince Dante to join him willingly, he still needs his blood and begins extracting it. Arius later meets Baines at his gala to celebrate Argisax's rebirth, but Bane seems slightly impacted by Lady's words and tries to convince Arius to let him be the one to activate the Arcana.
That you seek not to eradicate Satan, but to restore him. I told her that was impossible.
You really should have listened. There will be a rapture. Just not the one you're looking for.
But Arius no longer has any use for Banes in his plan and disposes of the Secret Service members and Darkcom soldiers accompanying him before killing Banes as well.
28 lifetimes. Finally.
Lady and Dante show up to try and stop him, but it's too late. He manifests the Sparta for Kai, and then the eclipse happens, allowing Argisax to finally awaken.
We are risen!
Although Argisax has been summoned, he's still on low battery, and Dante and Lady realize they have a short window to defeat him before he sucks off a bunch of souls and arrives at his full strength. They agree to split up and have Dante face off against Argisax, while Lady handles Kai. Argisax, despite being in a weakened state, is still able to get the upper hand against Dante initially, but Dante is saved when Virgil arrives. Despite being shown the truth behind Mundus's lies, Virgil refuses to trade one scheming overlord for another and joins Dante for his fight. Together, they destroy Argisax's sword, but still aren't powerful enough on their own to defeat him, and Argisax manages to knock them out of their devil triggers. But they realize they have one last Hail Mary. Argisax's goal was to kill Mundus once he was restored to his full power, but at his current state, Virgil thinks that Mundus would win. So Dante has Lady open the portal to the demon world so that they can knock Argisax through it and let Mundus kill him. A bit of enemy of my enemy. Lady opens the portal, and Dante and Virgil channel their energy into their bullets and shoot through Argisax's core, knocking him through the rift and follow him into the demon realm. Lady passes out so she can't close the rift behind her as planned, and lets go of Sparta, letting it get sucked into the rift. Argisax is confused by their actions as they couldn't defeat him on Earth, so what chance did they have in the demon world? But Mundus quickly senses Argisax's presence and rushes in to take care of business.
I had hoped for your rebirth, so that this time I can ensure nothing of you remains, even in memory.
Despite not being at full strength, Argisax seems to gain the upper hand against Mundus initially, but in the wake of a destructive beam, Mundus sneaks around behind Argisax and stabs his hand through his back, grabbing hold of Arius and ripping him out. Now that Argisax no longer has the Arcana empowering him, he is easily disposed of by Mundus, while Arius can only watch on from the ground as Mundus obliterates his god of chaos.
28 lifetimes. To live a moment as a god. A fair trade.
Now that we've more or less covered both versions of Arius, let's compare the two a bit. Obviously, they both have the same overarching goal, summon Argisax and acquire power at all costs, but their methods, motivations, and overall situations are quite different. In the game, he transforms Vie de Marly into a demon's paradise and talks about ruling over the world as an immortal, but that's really all we know about him as a person. His character is very campy, which admittedly fits in with the Devil May Cry series, but is otherwise very incomplete, especially with the story being additionally disjointed between the two campaigns. In the show, he's a much more serious and complete character, though. We get to see how and why he becomes an agent for Argisax, so we have a bit of context for his ultimate goal. He's also much more competent in this incarnation. Rather than the Arcana just happening to fall into his hands, he aggressively hunts them down, with 3 of them being in his possession before he's even introduced. And he actively manipulates President Hopper into providing a diversion so he can obtain the 4th. The show has received a lot of flack online for various reasons, primarily its representation of the protagonists Dante and Lady, but despite this, the antagonists were generally quite well received. Mundus and Arius in particular, with the latter easily becoming one of my favorite TV villains. Game Arius feels like he just exists simply to give Dante something to fight against and could be easily replaced with literally everything else and nothing would change, but show Arius is so carefully woven into the narrative that it feels like the show exists around him rather than the other way around. I know I said I'd be comparing the two, but in some aspects there really is no comparison. Similarly, Ouroboros gets a massive glow up in the show. None of what it does is really explained in the game, and the only thing we know is that Arius is its president. But in the show, Ouroboros not only serves as a symbol for Argisax, it functions as a parent company that allows Arius to hold immense political power. It controls Darkcom, allowing him to have a stake in the war on Makai. It controls many media conglomerates, allowing Arius to control the news and manipulate President Hopper into doing his bidding. And then speaking of it being a symbol of Argisax, he's also significantly more relevant in the show. In the game, Argisax lacks any kind of substance whatsoever, with all we know about him being that he's the god of chaos and was defeated by Sparta a long time ago. Devil May Cry 5 Before the Nightmare does flesh him out a bit more, but that was still 16 years after Devil May Cry 2 came out. But in the show, he gets a lot more context. He was the king of hell until he was betrayed and killed by his high priests led by Mundus. We not only know who Argisax is now and understand why Arius is hellbent on reviving him, but it also connects him to the rest of the franchise. Devil May Cry 2 is so far disconnected from everything else in the franchise that prior to the release of Devil May Cry 5, the canon ordering of the games was changed, with 2's placement being retconned to allow 4 and 5 to be better related to each other. But if you didn't already know that this had happened, you'd never have noticed. And while obviously the two characters are very different, Arius in the show does still maintain a few key traits or plot points from the game. In the game, Dante hands over the Arcana to Arius in exchange for Lucia, but instead of the Medaglia, he hands over his special coin with 2 heads on it. In the show, Dante similarly swaps out the real Medaglia for a coin of Ouroboros in the midst of the chaos in Arius' mountain lab. And in both iterations, Arius notices Dante's weakness for women. After being defeated in his office in the game, Arius turns to threaten Lucia to get Dante off his back, and in the show he notices how Dante acts whenever Lady is in danger, and so he orders his demons to specifically target his vulnerability and kidnap Lady to lure him away from Professor Lucan. And his absolute pursuit of power is also maintained in the show and emphasized really nicely as well. In the game, he somewhat shows off his desires to rule as king of the world, but again, he isn't really developed as a character, so we don't really get the full picture. But in the show, it becomes a major aspect of his character, especially in the later episodes. And this pursuit of power gives Arius a truly sadistic side that appears in some of my favorite villains of all time, like Albedo, Annabella Rosfield, Luca Blight, Handsome Jack, and Gontaro Dim.
But I think I mostly just wanted to look in your eyes when you realize your god planned none of this.
He has no allegiances to anyone but himself and Argisax, and won't hesitate to dispose of anyone once they no longer have a use to him. He has a very surface-level allegiance with President Hopper, and when Hopper shows himself to be a liability, Arius has no qualms blackmailing and killing him. And even Baines, who appears to be his closest ally, is easily disposed of without a second chance even being considered. But the ultimate proof of his desires comes from his final line of dialogue.
28 lifetimes to live a moment as a god. A fair trade.
He doesn't care that he was defeated, he still won. 28 lifetimes, 672 years. Wait a minute, what's the math telling us here? To get a singular, fleeting moment of the taste of being a god, and it was still worth it to him. If I did have any criticisms of Netflix's Arius, though, it would mainly be a couple of plot points that don't really go anywhere and leave you slightly wondering why they were even included in the first place. Like when we're shown Arius being abused by his father as a child in his first lifetime, I expected it to play into his character in some meaningful way, like playing into his motivations or explaining how he succumbed to Argisax's influence so easily, but it just didn't, or at the very least not to the level that might have made me appreciate it. And similarly, him promoting Lady to the commander of Darkcom's military division was also quickly forgotten. These two things feel like they should have been much more impactful in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion, but are instead forgotten about very quickly, leaving their inclusion a tiny bit confusing. In terms of symbolism, I initially had a lot more planned out for this section, but upon second thought, I scrapped a bunch of it. The troubling development of this game combined with the confusing end product that we did get had me second-guessing just about every word I was writing down, and I decided to not completely descend into madness scrambling for the faintest of connections that may or may not have survived whatever hell this game's development cycle was, and just kept the stuff that felt a little more concrete. Much like everything else in this series, Arius takes inspiration from real-life Christianity, or at least a lot of what gets associated with Christianity, and most likely takes his name from a Cyrenaic priest named, wait for it, Arius. Arius is most known for the Arian controversy, a dispute between him and Bishop Alexander of Alexandria. The core of the dispute was that Arius followed a doctrine now called Arianism. Yes, it was named after him. No, he was not the creator, which opposed the Trinitarian beliefs of the Christian Church. The Trinity is the concept that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are all unique extensions of God, and that all three are co-eternal, meaning that none existed before any other. Arianism asserted that the Son, Jesus, was created by God the Father, and therefore could not possibly be co-eternal with him. The result of the Arian controversy was that Arius was branded a heretic for his beliefs, leading to his exile from the church. Unfortunately, most of the information about Arius comes from biased sources from his enemies, such as Alexander, and we don't have any concrete knowledge of him until he was around 62, so in a way, he does share a major similarity with Devil May Cry 2's Arius in that we know absolutely nothing about him. Arius also takes heavy inspiration from the Magician Tarot card. Firstly, Arius is a sorcerer. Straightforward enough. Secondly, we can look at the Magician Tarot card from the Rider-Waite deck. In front of the Magician is a table with 4 objects: a sword, a staff, a chalice, and a coin, also known as the 4 minor arcana, which are perhaps unsurprisingly the same 4 objects as the arcana that Arius pursues to summon Argisax. Additionally, there are 2 symbols representing eternity in some form. The Magician's Belt is a snake eating its own tail, or an Ouroboros, which is also the name of Arius' company, and an infinity symbol floating above the Magician's head. The Ouroboros represents the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and takes on new symbolism with the Netflix show, as Arius has now had to go through a long cycle of death and rebirth in order to obtain the Arcana. Arius really did get a blessing with the existence of the Netflix adaptation. So many characters are given kind of underwhelming appearances in their own video game, to no fault of their own, but because of the scope of the game or development issues, and are just doomed to obscurity because of it. But Arius received a rare opportunity as a video game character and was given a second chance at life. I do wish I had a bit more to say about the video game version of Arius, but as you can see, there just really isn't much more to it. The game clearly suffered heavily in many aspects from having an unclear direction, with it only being somewhat salvaged with a new director 6 months before its deadline. The gameplay feels significantly shallower and less balanced compared to the other games, and the story is confusing and disjointed. And as a result of all this, I just don't really have much to dive into regarding the game he's supposed to be the big villain in, and also have a lack of confidence in attempting to tie in much more symbolism. I originally had a bunch more written out and wanted to try and dive deeper into the Magician connection, but all the connections felt weak or accidental, and I didn't feel comfortable putting that out there. Even though from what I read it was mostly gameplay that Itsuno helped to tidy up, the doubt in the final product was still planted, and any faith I had in what I was saying was very low. Hold up. Maybe the true villain of Devil May Cry 2 was Capcom.